Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer. Today's video is all about overpowered builds in Elden Ring. We are going to be diving into the best builds to reliably tackle New Game Plus and beyond with relative ease. There's a lot of information in this one, going over each build in detail as well as ranking these. Later in the video, there's a segment on giving these builds mini awards as to what other things they can do best, including best to hunt for larval tiers, highest damage ceiling, and easiest to make. This is going to be one of the most informative videos I've ever done for New Game Plus and beyond. It's really going to help you with that late game stretch, by the way. That late game stretch could be really difficult for a lot of players because of bosses' HP and resistances in the late game can be really challenging, so we're going to help out and give some advice with that too. And all footage, by the way, is on New Game Plus 7, so whatever New Game cycle you're on, these are going to be excellent for. These are something, by the way, if you're new, you can work towards, no doubt about it, and as you work towards these builds, you'll end up with really powerful and reliable builds too. This is going to be a fun and informative build video, so sit back and enjoy some great boss battles and builds. This is my top 10 overpowered builds for New Game Plus and beyond. This is going to be a really helpful one, especially for those really challenging bosses. Let's jump into this one, starting at number 10. And in number 10, we have a tie with two great options. Option 1 here is Guts and Lion's Claw, which may very well be the most reliable strength combo in the game. With that said, there is higher damage options, and that's why we have a tie. For Lion's Claw, though, you'll get great poise damage even for New Game Plus and later, where poise is increased significantly, up to 30% by New Game Plus 7, by the way. You also do pure physical damage, which is a low resisted type on the majority of bosses. This is a great combo with Guts Greatsword, and there's a reason it's always in the best of the best. It's reliable from start to finish. This is one of those ones you really can't go wrong with. Now, it's not as overpowered as some of the top ones on this list, but it is reliable consistently, and it's one of the few things that could still poise break on New Game Plus 7. And now we're going to jump into equipment. We have Guts Greatsword, that's the big greatsword, and heavy affinity with Lion's Claw. We have the Claw Mark Seal. We have the Raptor's Black Feathers. If you're doing jump attacks, mixing them in, it helps. Claw Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Erdtree's Favorite +2, Greenburst Crystal tier, and Faith tier. And for our stats, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 32 Endurance. We have 66 Strength, 99 when we're two-handing it. We have 25 Faith with the Faith tier. And then for our buffs, we're going to be using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength to get good damage out of this build. For the other option at number 10, we've got Royal Knight's Resolve on the Giant Crusher. This combo has a higher damage ceiling than Lion's Claw, but does less poise damage, even if that's surprising, and has less range if you're using the R2 or right trigger. Both these combos are very good. You can't really go wrong with either one, although many strength builds do fall off some by the time you get to New Game Plus 7. It's just the way it is with strength builds. Some of the more OP elemental damage stuff will shine a little bit more. Strength builds can still be good, though. Let's jump into equipment. And we have the Giant Crusher and Heavy Affinity with Royal Knight's Resolve. We have the Claw Mark Seal. We have 51 poise if you want to check out the armor set. Ritual Swords Talisman, Axe Talisman, Arsenal Charm +1, or Great Jar's Arsenal is better. Ritual Shield Talisman, Spike Crack tier, Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 32 Endurance. Same stats as before, 66 Strength, two-handing it, 99, 25 Faith with the Faith tier. We're using the same buffs here, Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. By the way, if you want more pure physical damage and you don't mind the farm or limited items, Blood Boil will give you 10% more damage. In number 9, we've got another tie, because these two are very similar, Spinning Weapon and Spinning Strikes. For the first one, we'll showcase Spinning Weapon on the Grave Scythe. This is the better option for bleed build-up, but does less physical damage than Spinning Strikes. The bleed build-up with Bloodflame Blade is insane, and it combos well for big hits with the Grave Scythe. This is a combination that, even here on New Game Plus 7, which is all footage as always, works like a charm. You'll get a lot of bleed build-up from this combination, and it can take down bosses quickly. It's also really easy to use, although it doesn't have the best range. We were able to take down Godric pretty easy. Not that he's that tough of a boss even on New Game Plus 7. New Game Plus and beyond, Godric is not one of the more challenging bosses in the game, but you could use this on a lot of different bosses, and Spinning Weapon is fantastic for quick bleed build-up and good damage. Yeah, this is also an incredibly fun one too, so try this one out for a fun strength build that you can throw Bloodflame Blade on a Grave Scythe. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have the Grave Scythe in Heavy Affinity with Spinning Weapon. We have the Claw Mark Seal. We have the White Mass, hit 51 poise, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Melissa's Prosthesis, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Thorny tier, and we have the Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. By the way, I'm going to put in the description, because these are the same stats again, which ones you could use together and try out together. This is another one you could use together with 66 Strength, 60 Vigor, Golden Vow, Flame Grant Strength, and Bloodflame Blade. For option B at number 9, we'll quickly showcase Spinning Strikes. This is a favorite, by the way. I like this one a lot, and this is the same build as before, stats included, except with Spinning Strikes, Ash of War instead. This combo does a ton of physical damage and good bleed build-up too, and it holds up on all bosses on New Game Plus and beyond. To keep it simple, Spinning Weapon gives you quicker procs, but for damage in between procs, Spinning Strikes does more physical damage. The Magma Worm, by the way, is pretty resistant to everything that isn't pierce damage, and he still went down really fast. This is definitely a good one to try out with Spinning Strikes. And next one up here at number 8 is Bloodhound's Fang. This is a really reliable weapon. Even on New Game Plus and beyond, it holds up, no question about it. It does good bleed build-up, and the Ash of War Bloodhound's Finesse also does great poise damage. Much like Lion's Claw, the damage isn't always going to be insane, but it is the definition of reliability. I would say Lion's Claw and Guts Greatsword and Bloodhound's Fang are two of the most reliable things that you could use because of the amount of physical damage you get. And in Bloodhound's Fang case, you're actually going to get bleed buildup too, a decent amount of bleed buildup, around 95 bleed with Bloodflame Blade. Overall, making this an awesome option. Yeah, if you haven't tried out Bloodhound's Fang, definitely try it out. No question about it. It's going to help you with several of the boss fights in the game. It's not the best on this list for the late game stretch on New Game Plus and beyond, but it is overall incredibly reliable and very useful. Some people may end up commenting and saying, well, how did this not make it higher on the list because they're on new game? It's just certain weapons have a little bit of a fall off. Bloodhound's Fang isn't a major one, but there is better options. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have Bloodhound's Fang plus 10. We're obviously using Bloodflame Blade 2. We have the Claw Mark Seal. We have the White Mask Raptor's Black Feathers in case you're doing jump attacks, Ritual Shield, and Sword Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Shard of Alexander, Strength Tier, and Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats for this one. And for stats, this is one of the best quality builds in the game. We have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 26 Endurance, 60 Strength when we're two-handing this. We have 60 Dexterity too because we're using the Strength tier as well. 25 Faith with the Faith tier. And then we're going to be using Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Bloodflame Blade to buff up Bloodhound's Fang, a very awesome choice. And at number 7, we've got Death's Poker, an amazing weapon for getting frost buildup and magic damage. This weapon's ash does not fall off on New Game Plus and beyond much, and still scales well with intelligence despite the D that it gets. The weapon itself is based off your dexterity stat, but the ash is all intelligence. This makes it an easy mage sidearm that could dish out massive damage. Godfrey here is tough, as are some of the more human and faster bosses because the ash is a bit slow, but the damage is phenomenal. There's really no question whatsoever that Death's Poker is still a very good weapon on New Game Plus and later, and one every mage should have in their arsenal because of the amount of frost buildup, the amount of magic damage, and the fact that it's pure intelligence scaling on the ash. This is one of those weapons that you could buff up, even if you just use a couple buffs, the frost damage, the magic damage, it's incredible. Now, I do struggle a little bit with Godfrey here, but because of the fact that he's a little bit faster, and again, the ash is always going to be 2 inputs, and you have to decide which input you want to use. One is going to be the explosion, and the other one leaves a frost trail. I tend to like the frost trail better, especially for bigger bosses, as they tend to sit in it. Quick tip for Godfrey as a whole, he has only 20 magic and fire resistance in phase 1. In phase 2, when he's Hoaraloo, he has 0 fire and magic resistance, so anything magic is going to be really good, and anything fire is going to be really good to take him on in phase 2. And he's going to do a couple slams here, of course, because he's got to get those in. He did end up getting, I think we ended up getting probably 2 or 3 frost procs as a whole, which is pretty incredible. Death's Poker probably has the highest frost auxiliary in the entire game. I mean, the build-up is absolutely insane. Alright, he's almost finished off here. On New Game Plus 7, he could be a little bit challenging with the amount of HP he gets. Yeah, some of the late game bosses, man, they just get so much HP and then they do so much damage to you too. Godfrey's grapple can actually do 60 vigors worth of damage even if you have good armor on, which is just absolutely crazy. In a second here, we're going to go over equipment, everything you need to know. For equipment, we have Death's Poker plus 10, any staff for Terra Magic, any seal for buffs. Spellblade set will boost this. That mask increased dexterity. We needed that for this build. Ritual Shield and Sword Talisman, Magic Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Magic Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 22 Endurance, 16 Strength, 18 Dexterity. That mask has given us 3 extra Dexterity. We have 60 Intelligence, 23 Faith, 33 with the Faith Tier, Golden Vow, Hellish Fury, and Terra Magic as our buffs. At number 6, we've got Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, which is one of the most powerful incantations in the game. This one used to crack the top 5 and 3 for me, and it is amazing when doing a lot of buffing. But there's a lot of RNG to this one too. No doubt this one has the RNG, absolutely is a factor, but the payoff is absolutely amazing. When it lands, you'll do massive lightning damage, and big targets it absolutely destroys. However, it could also miss from time to time or not hit for as much as you expected. Overall, though, it has no fall off on New Game Plus Beyond and is one of the best dragon and big target destroyers in the entire game. Yeah, this is absolutely a favorite for me. This is a favorite for a lot of people because it's incredibly fun to use. By the way, I probably should have gotten him in 2 casts there. I felt like it kind of ripped me off a little bit at the end with that amount of HP, but it doesn't matter because you can hit him as he attempts to go into phase 2. And we brought the big dragon down, which by the way has a total of 38,000 HP on New Game Plus 7. So once you get to New Game Plus and beyond, this is one of the bosses that has really high HP and resistances, much like Elden Beast can be a little bit of challenge. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have the Gravelstone Seal and the Jellyfish Shield. We hit 51 poise. We have the Godfrey Icon, Ritual Swords Talisman, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Phlox Canvas Talisman, Lightning Tear, Faith Tear. Let's jump into stats for this one. For stats, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 23 Endurance, 20 Strength so we can use the Jellyfish Shield, 15 Dexterity, 80 Faith with the Faith Tier, of course. And then we're using Golden Vow, Howl of Shibiri, and of course, Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. In number 5, we have Mohgwyn's Sacred Spear, a weapon that does immense fire and bleed damage. This is another one that doesn't fall off at all on New Game Plus and beyond because you're getting a ton of bleed procs on top of a good damage type with fire. The bleed procs, percentage damage, or chunks of HP are all good on New Game Plus and later because it scales with the overall boss's HP. This makes bleed and frost very good since they take a flat percentage of the boss's HP, in this case bleed here. Mohgwyn's Sacred Spear's Ash Blood Boon Ritual scales with Arcane mainly, so there's no need to go crazy with strength if you're using only the Ash. For me, I set this up so you can use this weapon along with the Twin Blades and another weapon we'll showcase later. This one is for sure a solid option and is ridiculous. Yeah, the Ash is insane. We have Mohgwyn's Sacred Spear plus 10, Dragon Communion Seal, White Mask, we hit 51 poise, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Fire Scorpion Charm, Flame Tier, and Faith Tier. For stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 16 Mind, 26 Endurance, we have 45 Strength, 15 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Faith Tier, and 45 Arcane. That's the soft cap, by the way, for Arcane, so you do want to hit that. That's the first initial good soft cap, and we're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. At number 4, we've got the Darkmoon Greatsword. This weapon is incredible, and honestly one of the best magic options in the game. It's a staple for FromSoftware games, previously known as the Moonlight Greatsword. The Ash scales purely with intelligence and can be charged for massive damage and some poise damage too. It actually does around 30-something poise damage per hit, which is pretty awesome. This is a reliable weapon for any new game cycle, and by the way, you could also use the Jellyfish Shield for 20% more damage. It's one of those rare Ashes of War that you could actually use the Jellyfish Shield with the way it activates, because afterwards you get the charged R2 beams, which by the way are chargeable and boosted by the Godfrey icon. This is undeniably a top weapon on almost every list, and it sure shines in the spotlight here. Have this one ready for DLC if you're a mage or battle mage. Keep in mind, by the way, FromSoftware, even in DLCs, magic usually is pretty good, so the Darkmoon Greatsword could be a solid option for you. Yeah, and you'll be able to take on any of the bosses in the late game stretch with the Darkmoon Greatsword too. Yeah, it falls off a little bit against Elden Beast, but there's so many builds that do. I actually have a build at the end of this video that I'm going to show that's reliable and can make the Radagon Elden Beast fight a lot easier for you. Yeah, it can make your life a lot easier. It's definitely one of those reliable things that you could do each time to deal with that. I know a lot of people on New Game Plus 7 really struggle with this late game stretch. That's why I've been talking about it throughout the video. The Darkmoon Greatsword is one of those better weapons to handle that stretch. Pretty much any of the top 5, by the way, are perfect for handling that late game stretch. So if you're having trouble with that, any of the top 5 here are going to be excellent. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment, we have the Darkmoon Greatsword plus 10. We're using Lucette's Staff, any seal for buffs. We have the Spellblade set, which will boost this Ash. Godfrey Icon, Ritual Swords Talisman, Magic Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, Magic Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. For stats, we have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 22 Endurance, 16 Strength, 15 Dexterity, 60 Intelligence, 23 Faith, which is 33 with the Faith Tier. Then we have Golden Vow, Howl of Shibiri, and Terra Magica to buff the Darkmoon Greatsword. And number 3, bleed builds make the top 3 because of course they do. The Scavengers are excellent if you're capping at meta levels because you could easily keep 60 Vigor and 51 poise. You have a lot of room to move stats around, having to only invest in Arcane on Occult. These ones are one of my favorites due to not having to split stats and makes life easier when you're capping at rune level 125 or 150. If you're looking for the best swords, curved swords at high levels, max level, I'll leave that in the descriptions. The Bandit curved swords are the highest AR in the game at max level. We have 2 Scavenger curved swords on Occult, we're using the Dragon Communion Seal. We have Seppuku on both, White Mask, Raptor's Black Feathers. Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Rotwing Sword Insignia, Claw Talisman, Millicent's Prosthesis, Thorny Tear, Faith Tear. Let's jump into stats for this one. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 13 Mind, 28 Endurance, 16 Strength, 20 Dexterity with Millicent's Prosthesis, 25 Faith with the Faith Tier. We have 75 Arcane. That gives us around 550 AR each and good bleed build-up. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Now, if you're all about Twin Blades, I think the Gargoyle Twin Blades are going to be the best at around rune level 150. They're going to give you a good amount of AR and then around 130 bleed build-up too, making them a solid option. I end up missing a couple of my jump attacks here. I do tend to hit better with curved swords. I think that's why I like curved swords better, plus the damage in between procs seems to be a little bit better, but overall, once I hit him at the end there, I was able to get 2 quick procs and a lot of damage. By the way, if I sound different, I got a new mic. It's clearer, but it's a little bit lower, so I'm going to have to try to work with it, see if I can make it better. We have 2 Gargoyle Twin Blades and Blood Affinity with Seppuku. We're using the Dragon Communion Seal, White Mask, Raptor's Black Feathers. We have the Claw Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Rotwing Sword Insignia, Millicent's Prosthesis, Thorny Tear, and Faith Tear. And we're going to jump into stats on this one, which is the same stats, by the way, as Mohgwyn's Sacred Spear, so you could run both. 60 Vigor, 45 Strength, 45 Arcane, 25 Faith with the Faith Tier. And then we're going to be using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Now, you'll get more bleed build up out of Twin Blades, but for me, the damage in between procs, especially between 125 and 150, the Scavengers are best. And number 2, the last 2 are very much interchangeable. We've got Night Comet, which could certainly make a case for number 1. This is a spell that can't be seen, AI doesn't react to it, and it's chargeable with a high damage ceiling. Night Comet easily hits for between 3 and 5k damage, which is insane given that it's relatively fast to cast even when you charge it. I did a run once with a very similar setup through the entire game with Night Comet on New Game Plus 7, and it was the easiest time I think I've ever had. It also has range that borderlines on absurd. This is one with 2 Staves of Loss that you could absolutely destroy some of the bosses with, including the Fire Giant here, who by the way has 0 magic resistance. This absolutely has my recommendation for DLC too, since magic is consistently good in FromSoftware games that includes DLC as well, so if you're looking for an easy mode throughout DLC, Night Comet could very well be the answer. Speaking of which, if you have 2 Staves of Loss, since we're talking about New Game Plus and Beyond builds, and you can get 2, you will have a 60% boost to Night Comet before any additional buffs. Seriously, the one recent run I've done with Night Comet, I think I've done 2 in total through the entire game. The only boss that even gave me somewhat of a hard time was Elden Beast because of his resistances, and I just switched to Shard Spiral to Lucette's Staff for that and took him down. But overall, Night Comet is just going to chew through boss HP and kind of walk you through the game. It has incredible range and does massive magic damage. Almost trade, by the way, at the end with the Fire Giant there. We both took shots at each other and he ended up going down. I figured I would have it if he hit me once, and he did end up hitting me once with the Fireball. But overall, he went down. Not too many uses of Night Comet. A solid and powerful build for magic damage. Let's jump into equipment. We have 2 Staves of Loss. We have the Golden Order Seal. We didn't worry about poise here. I have the mask that added dexterity because the stats are a little bit tight on this one. Godfrey Icon, Ritual Swords Talisman, Magic Scorpion Charm, Graven Mask Talisman, Magic Tier, and Faith Tier. We have 50 Vigor, 21 Mind, 18 Endurance. We have 80 Intelligence, 23 Faith, which is 33 with the Faith Tier. We're using Golden Vow, Halashaburi, Terra Magica, and Night Comet. At number 1, the Blasphemous Blade still takes this spot, although for DLC this one might be moving down a bit. For the base game though, there's nothing easier to use and understand than the Blasphemous Blade. It does great fire damage and heals you too. This is one of the safest weapons in the game to use and one of the most reliable ashes too. Pick this one to have for any time you get stuck on the late game stretch and you'll be walking through the end game. I think it takes a total on New Game Plus 7 here of about 6 Ashes of War, 6 uses of the Ash of War, Taker's Flame, something like that. He has 0 fire resistance, it does a lot of damage to him, and you're able to heal throughout the fight too, which is a huge bonus for this one. Of course, he always gets his slams in at the end. We're going to move on to Elden Beast, and I'm going to show my strategy, which is a little bit of a mixed build to take down Elden Beast. This is a reliable way to take them down, to take this whole fight down, which can be a little bit of a stamina check on New Game Plus 7 or New Game Plus and beyond, relatively easy. And now I'm going to show my strategy for Elden Beast, who is very difficult for many on New Game Plus 7. This works well, usually takes 2 to 3 minutes roughly, and for me at most 1 to 3 tries. The only thing I do, by the way, is add in Phlox Canvas Talisman, and then I'm going to be using the Erdtree Seal, which has 353 scaling with the 80 faith we have, and then we're going to use Pest Threads. As you saw there, I stacked up over 11,000 damage. Which is a pretty impressive amount. I mean, you can get him down at least 1/3 of his HP right from the beginning if you can use Hellish Reburi at the end of the Radagon fight to boost your damage further, and then use the Erdtree Seal, which has 353 scaling, Pest Threads, and he's going to have around 1/3, maybe half of his HP before he takes off. By the way, overall the strategy is simple. As far as the Pest Threads, use it as often as you can, but you could also use the Blasphemous Blade to gain back HP, which I actually should have done a few times here, but I often forget to switch which strat I'm using, and Pest Threads was doing great damage. This combination can keep you alive and do good damage during this marathon of a fight, which, by the way, this fight could be a buzzkill for many at the end of the game, especially by the time you get to New Game Plus and later New Game Plus 7. This fight's definitely one of the more challenging ones in terms of being a massive stamina check. This build will absolutely do well every time. Stay focused, pace healing in the Blasphemous Blade, and continue to use Pest Threads. 2 to 3 minutes without any crazy buffing, and Elden Beast will go down. Our journey after this one, by the way, will be Journey 38. Still can't believe this character has gotten this far. By the way, this whole channel now is 2 years old. It's been 2 years since my channel started. I started my channel a couple months after Elden Ring's release, around late May, early June of 2022. So we're coming up on 2 years for the channel. We've hit 30,000 subs. It's been incredible. Also, make sure you do sub for awesome Elden Ring content and DLC coverage. Yeah, Shadow of the Erdtree is going to be awesome. I cannot wait for it. FromSoftware always delivers too. I'm looking forward to the combat system too. That's going to be interesting. I've heard now that it's voluntary. It's up to you whether you want to use it or not, and it actually could make it good for replay value too, maybe using the combat system once and playing it the regular way too. And yeah, I just saw some of the interviews and stuff with Miyazaki, however you say his name. Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a voluntary option in terms of the combat system, but how it works is if you use it, you kind of have to build up power along beating bosses and enemies and stuff along the way, kind of like a Sekiro type system, as opposed to the Elden Ring's normal system. Love, by the way, that we're finding out that it's voluntary, though. That's really cool. By the way, at the end here, we're able to finish off Elden Beast using Pest Threads. Again, it just does so much damage to him overall. Right there, just one use, 2,300 damage, and most of our buffs have pretty much run out at this point. Maybe Golden Vow still active, but overall still great damage. And it was about a 2.5 minute fight, which really isn't that bad on New Game Plus 7 for Elden Beast. Yeah, you gotta run around, you gotta chase him a lot. It's not the most fun final boss in FromSoftware's history, but if you use a build like this one, it's reliable, solid, and can get you through the marathon of the fight. Let's jump into equipment. And for equipment, we have the Blasphemous Blade plus 10. We're using the Erdtree Seal for Pest Threads. You can check out the armor set there. Hit 51 poise, Shard of Alexander, Ritual Sword Talisman, Fire Scorpion Charm, Phlox Canvas Talisman, Flame Tier, Faith Tier. Let's talk about stats. And we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 23 Endurance, 20 Strength, 70 Faith, which hits 80 with the Faith tier. We're using Golden Vow, Hellish Reburi, and Pest Threads. And for me, this is the most consistent way to get through that fight. So if you're really struggling on New Game Plus and beyond with this fight, try this build out. You won't regret it. Alright, now it's time for a quick fun segment. The best R2 or right trigger, Giant Crusher absolutely takes this one, as you could flatten NPCs in the game and it's absolutely hilarious, and it also does massive damage. This is absolutely one of the best R2s or right triggers in the game, no doubt about it. Next up here, we have most stat-friendly bleed build, the Scavenger Curve Swords. You can get to 75, 80 Arcane, still keep 60 Vigor, a decent amount of Mind, and a good amount of Endurance too. It's absolutely stat-friendly for your bleed build. No doubt they win that award for sure because you have so much room to move around other stats. I really like that about the Scavenger Curve Swords. The next one we have up here is the most fun. For me, that's Spinning Strikes. I have the most fun with Spinning Strikes and Spinning Weapon in the game. Between the two of them, you'll have an absolute blast. You could try either one of these ones to see how much damage you can build up, and you're honestly going to be impressed with it. Spinning Strikes especially, you can keep going, and Spinning Weapon's really fun to see how much bleed build up you can get quickly. The next one up here is the easiest one to make from the start of the game, and then just completely onwards from there is Lion's Claw and Guts. No question about it. Yeah, this is a really easy one. You could start out, grab Guts Greatsword, grab Lion's Claw. The only really difficult talisman you need for this build is the Shard of Alexander. Everything else is pretty much optional. You're still going to get massive physical damage and poise damage. For me, the easiest one to make, no question, is Guts and Lion's Claw. And the next one up here is the best to hunt larval tiers, in my opinion, Death's Poker. These could be really challenging to get, especially on New Game Plus and beyond, all the way up to New Game Plus 7, where some of these Rune Bears can be difficult to fight, but they'll appear right on top of the Frost Trail, and they'll take massive damage as a result. Yeah, an easy one for fighting some of those tough enemies that drop the larval tiers. Now, if there was an 11, Marais Executioner, no question about it. It does fall off a little bit. It's absolutely better when you hyper buff it or buff like crazy, but for me, if there was an 11, Marais Executioner Sword is perfect. At least for being in that number 11 spot, because I couldn't think of anything better that would fit at number 11 than Marais Executioner's Sword. You have all those successive attack build up and everything, and even with 2 buffs in your tier, a lot of the bosses in the game, 2, 3, maybe 4 uses of the Ash of War on New Game Plus and beyond. It's pretty incredible. Let's talk about equipment. For equipment, we have Marais Executioner Sword plus 10. We have the Dragon Communion Seal. We hit 51 poise. Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. Shard of Alexander. Ritual Swords Talisman. Godfrey Icon. It is chargeable. Thorny tier. Faith tier. Let's jump into stats. And for stats, we have 60 Vigor, 16 Mind, 26 Endurance, 45 Strength. We have 45 Arcane, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, Golden Vow, and we're using Flame Grant Me Strength as well. Highest damage ceiling absolutely goes to Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. With 2 buffs, our tier, and the Jellyfish Shield, we took on this dragon. We did its full HP bar, which I think it has around 40,000 HP, which is pretty incredible. Took him down in a single cast of Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. And now a couple of notes at the end here. Most reliable per hit, Bloodhound's Fang between the poise and bleed build up. Easiest to use, Blasphemous for Night Comet. Best to over level, the Bandit Curve Swords are insane at max level. Most ridiculous Ash goes to Mohgwyn Sacred Spear, of course. Weapons to avoid that fall off. Moonveil definitely falls off on New Game Plus and beyond. Ruin's Greatsword is pretty terrible on New Game Plus 7, to be honest. Most Holy, that's not bubble. Strength that relies on poise damage. Magma Blades can be replaced with Flame Art. Bandit Curve Swords with Flaming Strike for more jump attack damage. Yeah, Lion's Claw just does enough damage with the poise damage. Everything else is just really tough. Thanks for watching this one. I hope this helps you make overpowered and reliable builds in Elden Ring on New Game Plus and beyond. DLC is only 5 weeks away. That's right, it's only 5. I think it's actually less than 5 weeks by the time this video comes out. I can't wait for that. It's going to be amazing. Let's keep this going and continue to make awesome builds when DLC arrives. We've also hit 30,000 subs, so a big thank you for that. Be sure to hit that sub button, and I will catch everyone soon.